All right. Let's go ahead and take roll for December 16th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Chair Cal Patel is excused. Vice Chair Mark Collins present. Commissioner Hank.
Present.
Commissioner Hank is present. Commissioner
I'm present.
Stephanie.
Present.
And Commissioner Angelina will be joining us shortly. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
How about on the count of
I
three?
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
liberty and justice for all.
Um, So next would be approval of the tonight's agenda. Maybe the best thing to do is Mark. Yeah, Mark. He's not feeling well. We lost Mark. So what we can do is we can continue to go through the agenda because we don't have a quorum at this moment. We just would not have either of you vote on any of the items, so wouldn't have you vote on the agenda or the minutes. And we can just move down the agenda and start doing the workshops. And then once Angelina Capostello joins us, then we'd be able to kind of proceed with any other formal actions. Is that okay with both of the commission members?
Sure.
Yeah, Mark just texted. He just said that his service went out.
Okay, no worries. I appreciate him hanging out there. So we'll go ahead and start on the workshop. And this is all going to be about the comprehensive plan. So this is a follow-up from last month's discussion about the two different growth trends. If you recall from last month, our consultant with Framework identified a lineal growth factor. So what if we continue to grow for the next 20 years? So from 2022 to 2042 at the same rate that the state thought we would grow, which would be somewhere around 3% per year. And he also proposed a growth style population increase that was based on how we've actually been growing since 2017. And 2017 is the magic number because that's our official start of our next planning period. So that growth would be much more similar to the almost 30% type of growth we've had since 2017. And the Plan Commission had recommended continuing to move forward with those factors when we start to look at options for how we're going to accommodate housing. So I'm going to share some information that was in your packet. And let me know that you are able to see this. Okay.
Yep.
Great. So what we're really trying to get to at the end of this evening is to whittle down some properties to consider that we might change zoning on inside the city, or that we might consider bringing to consideration for city area through what's called an urban growth area boundary. Now, an urban growth area boundary simply means it's an interim designation for property that Airway Heights believes that they will annex eventually over the 20-year period in order to be able to grow and accept the amount of population that we've been provided by the state numbers. And in this case, perhaps a higher number based on the amount of growth that's projected. So roughly speaking, when we look at population, that translates into a total number of housing units that we will need. And what our consultant has identified is we have several ways to meet these housing demands. So this first map in the packet was simply just a zoning map to orient us to the existing city in our existing urban growth area. And our existing urban growth area was adopted in 2020, and it was a carryover from when these were originally identified in 2008. So we've had them for quite a while. But the urban growth areas that we currently have are these orange hashed lines on the map. They're currently in Spokane County. They're not part of the city. Just to orient you on the map, this is US 2 going through the city. This portion of the green area is the Spokane Raceway. The rec center is up here. This yellow color is the Kalispell Trust land, and this yellow color is the Spokane Trust land. And the yellows reflect on this map current residential zoning. So anything that's in yellow is current residential zoning. The lighter color is single family. The darker color, more orangish, is multifamily. And commercial is red. And industrial is gray. And the light green is public land. So it gives you an orientation just to the map real quick. So one of the base assumptions that the consultant and we discussed comes from some other plans we recently adopted and so the question tonight is, should we carry those forward for consideration into the new plan? One of those we talked about last week, which is that we could assume to meet our housing demand that some amount of our existing commercial area, which is in this darker red, this is again US 2, and this is Garfield Road, might develop as mixed use. And mixed use is multifamily on top of, in the same building as office or retail. In our last plan, it anticipated about 30% of this entire dark red area might become mixed use. One of the things we discussed was when we first adopted mixed use back in 2012, we have not seen a single mixed use project be applied for. And the consultant has recommended lowering that assumption of how much we might expect for new housing in this commercial area to just 10%. Another piece that we might carry forward into the new plan is when we adopted the downtown plan this year, they recommended multifamily. So this would be an up zone from current single family north of a proposed downtown, so north of US 2, to accommodate higher density future housing. So this would be redevelopment of areas already built. There are some big lots here. And part of the potential here to think about is, would that move forward as high density residential, or could it move forward as mixed use? So kind of a decision tree there. In the last comprehensive plan, we had some properties that were proposed to go to medium density residential, which goes along with our R2 zone. So you could do single family and duplexes. It's about 5 to 10 units per acre. The property owner hasn't completed the requirements to rezone this property, but we could consider, if they finished it, those requirements, we could also consider this as potentially residential. What you can see from this map, because even though it has zoning, is we have very little undeveloped residential land remaining, which is why we're in this scenario with our consultant of looking at alternatives, because even though it doesn't show buildings, this dark orange area and this light yellow area already has buildings on it. This dark orange area here already has some buildings on it. This is Highland Village. And we also have a final plat application for single family up in this light yellow area. This is the future elementary school site for Cheney School District. So we're really only talking about, you know, some pieces of property really right through here that don't have a current development approval on them. And we're looking at some property right here and this site right here. This dark orange one's already being built on. This is where the Sky View apartments are currently under construction. So just a little background of how we can think about some vacant properties might proceed in the future to help us meet our housing allocation. Now, one of the interesting things when we look at urban growth area is this piece of property, it's about 138 acres, could be kept into our urban growth area. So we'd retain it and we would designate a medium density residential potentially to this area in order to help meet our housing requirements. That would be a base assumption we could move forward with. So about 138 acres. Just to help you gauge size, that's 138. This piece of property right here is less than 5 for purposes of scale. Okay, looks like Angelina's joining us. So those are base assumptions, and I'm going to pause there for a moment while Angelina joins in on the meeting. Are there any questions about some base assumptions we might carry forward to think about how we might start to help achieve our housing needs?
I just want to make sure, so the brown area that you have kind of marked for the multifamily, that's right by where that one apartment complex is, right? Currently?
There are
Kind of like
not.
the Thai place or whatever.
Yeah, so this strip right here, commercial has Solitai, the Bali.
Okay.
This is the Yokes right here. This is Sunset Elementary, and this is Sunset Park.
Okay.
Good questions. So with the analysis that we looked at last month, if we had continued to think that our commercial areas were going to become residential, that mixed use at the much higher rate, plus we looked at annexing this piece of property, we probably would have enough area to accommodate our residential or housing projection. What really changes that picture is in this scenario here we just talked about. Even if we annexed and did a medium density residential of about 5 to 10 units per acre, if we lower the assumption that only 10% would become mixed use here, there's not enough current vacant land available in this scenario to meet our housing requirements, with the exception of we haven't yet analyzed this 10-acre potential or this mixed use. So again, looking at just the commercial areas and annexing this, there's not enough at this lower 10% assumption.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pause there because I see Angelina has joined us. Hello, Angelina.
Hello. Sorry,
Hi.
I was having technical difficulties.
I hear you. Mark had technical difficulties, and so he's not here. And I may have to go to video because I've had internet issues as well. But I would just bring you up to date that we did get through attendance, but we are at a point where we have a quorum with you here, and the 3 of you will need to elect a acting chairperson for this evening, so that if there's any action that the commission would take, that you would be, or Stephanie or Hank would be querying the group about those and in facilitating a formal meeting for the Plan Commission.
Well, I elect Hank.
I second.
Hey, I always thought it was the person that came to the meeting last that got it.
We got you while you were drinking your drink. You couldn't say anything. Okay.
Well, let me ask you this, Heather. That's fine. I don't mind sharing it in lieu of Cal and Mark, but do we want to consider the approval of the previous minutes to the last meeting? Is that the next thing on the agenda, I think?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Do we need to have a motion to elect the temp chair and all that?
You mean formalize it, Zach?
Just for the
Okay.
paperwork.
Okay. We can just show that I was nominated and that I reluctantly accepted.
Okay.
Yes.
For the notes, thank you.
For the notes, yeah, good call, Zach, way to go. So I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Do I get a second from anyone?
I'll second.
Okay, way to step up.
And I
And I don't,
motion to elect Hank as chair for tonight's meeting.
thank you, thank you. Let's see. Now, I don't see where we have any of the public joining us this evening, so am I to understand then from that there's no public comment available?
That would be correct. We did receive apologies from Greg Figg, Washington State Department of Transportation, and
But he spoke in.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Greg Figg with the Department of Transportation and Kevin Freebot with the City of Spokane, that they weren't able to join us this evening, but they were very interested in the topic and they want to follow up.
Okay, very good. So without public comment, we'll move on to presentations. Heather, are you gonna begin?
Yes, I will actually under workshops, just talking about the population projection alternatives, linear and growth.
Okay,
And just to recap, the projections were presented last month for the Plan Commission. The linear is a planning horizon of 2022 to 2042, based on the type of growth that we had been allocated through the state and through the countywide planning process, which is something around 3%. The growth called scenario is again the same horizon, 2022 to 2042, but it's based on the type of growth and the rate of growth that we've had since 2017, which is the official beginning of this planning period under the state for Spokane County. We plan in 20-year increments. And that is based on, for example, that we've had almost a 30% growth rate over
wow.
2017 to 2021. So that's 2021, over 4 years. So we're looking at something just probably just under 10% of growth would be in that growth-based scenario. And the Plan Commission recommended that we continue to look at both of these scenarios as we move forward, looking at alternatives. So just to recap, our goal tonight at the end of these 3 items under workshop is to get a recommendation from the Planning Commission of at least one, potentially 2 land use scenarios that include potentially some rezones and some urban growth area exchanges. And that's what the first map that I just went through would show you, is some rezones within the city. And then the next map, which I have not gone through, would talk about some additional rezones and some urban growth area changes. So I'll just pause there if there are any questions.
Can we go back to the map?
Mhm.
I was a little bit late getting to that. I'm so sorry.
Not at all.
And then I missed the last meeting and I'm very sorry about that too. My gosh.
Well,
I
we
need,
had a lot of fun at your expense if it's any consolation to you.
Ugh. You know, I was just gonna mention really quick, you know, the Kalispell tribe purchased the Raceway Park. They're going to be building, I believe, mixed-use homes. And I talked to Kurt Friedenberg. He's one of the Kalispell councilmen. And he was saying they were going to be doing single homes at first, but that was over a year ago. And I had recommended to him if he could do condos or townhouses, or a little more, mixed use, and even a little bit more walkable community within that area, because that's a pretty big area. And that would provide a lot of housing. So I don't know, have you been having Kalispells come to the table sometimes for your planning meetings, and they'll probably purchase more land in the future.
So that actually would speak to map number 2, which we haven't gone through yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The first map is just carrying forward some assumptions based on the 2020 comprehensive plan or some pending applications that haven't yet been completed that would impact available land and their density for housing. And so
Okay.
the first map reflects, for example, from the 2020 comp plan, this piece of property, the 10 acres, that they're looking to go to medium density residential. So one option is to carry that forward as part of an alternative.
Mhm.
The other is to lower the expectations for mixed use in the commercial area from the last comp plan to 10%. It was 30%. We're proposing 10% because we haven't seen a single mixed use project thus far. And then with the downtown plan, it proposed up zoning low density or single family area
Mhm.
north of the downtown to multifamily, but it could be multifamily or mixed use. And so I'm just kind of listing out these options that we can carry forward into 1 or 2 or maybe 3 clearly defined alternatives, because the goal will be that we'll put these on 2 or 3 maps and we're going to put them on the website, and we're going to go through a public process to have people vote on their preferred alternative. And that preferred alternative combined with plan commission review will be what goes into the draft land use chapter.
Okay, so the 10 acres would only be able to provide 10 homes, single family homes.
No, this 10 acres, they're proposing medium density residential, and that's 5 to 10 units per acre.
Okay. Okay.
Mixed use would allow, or multifamily, both of these would be about 10 to 20 units per acre.
Okay.
Do we think that the lack of interest, in kind of building those multi-use along Highway 2 is because the high traffic density, or?
I think that there's a couple of different reasons. One is probably just a lack of awareness that Airway Heights has a mixed use zone. I think that the mixed use zone we have is a deterrent because it requires a conditional use permit and requires a demonstration of community need. Because it's located in the sound contour area, which is an overlay zone for Fairfield space.
Okay.
And honestly, there's a lot of vacant land in this area when you're driving around US 2. So having vacant, property is not, I think, a factor. They're not having to tear anything down in a lot of these locations. But I'm not sure that on the highway is the first place people would think to put mixed use, though it should be. I mean, because the idea is, you have multifamily over office or retail.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the second alternative that we have here, this is not meant to be everything to be considered. This is like a multiple choice essay for you all tonight. And I'm going to go back through and have you kind of give me a thumbs up or thumbs down for each of these alternatives. But I'm going to walk you through what this incorporates. So this scenario 2 contemplates some additional rezoning to get to housing. So Angelina's comment about the Kalispell property, which is, you can't see the line very well in this map, but it's basically this green area here. That's the 200 acres that they just bought, 250 acres, and it has the raceway track on it. That also includes this parcel here. This parcel is currently industrial. This is recreation. Look at the map. Yep, recreation. I got it
Yeah.
right this time. Now, in this option, it just included this piece of property, but pursuant to Angelina's comment, if you wanted to suggest expanding that to include additional property in this area, that could be an alternative that moves forward as part of a public engagement process. There are several other parcels here owned privately that we could consider rezoning. This one is heavy industrial, and these parcels here are also light industrial. And I'm going to note here that we haven't talked to any of the property owners because we're just in a process of trying to narrow down some options. And after we get to some final alternatives, we would reach out to those property owners and make them aware that their property is included in this. With the exception that we were contacted by the realtor representing these parcels, and they are interested in pursuing residential for these parcels along, this is Hayford Road right here, and this is Dino Road on the north side.
So that little square section within the Kalispell, you said that was in zoned industrial. Do you think they would, I wonder if they're going to try to rezone that for housing area or?
Well, the recreation designation doesn't currently allow for residential, so they would have some options. They could go through comprehensive plan amendment, the exercise that we're talking about, to redesignate it to residential, low density, medium, or high density residential, or the tribe could put it into trust land.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so for Stephanie and Hank, putting it into trust land basically puts it into the hands of the sovereign nation of the Kalispell tribes under the protection organization of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And so it trust land, like this yellow property, is not subject to local zoning requirements or limitations. Along with the rezones that we could also consider is that the Kalispell tribe did begin a rezone on 28 acres here back in 2019. It's not been completed yet, but they were seeking an R3 or high density residential. At the time, it went through the Plan Commission and the City Council, and it was sent back to the Plan Commission because there were concerns about having high density residential here. So one possibility is to only have a medium density or up to 10 units per acre, which is the R2 would be considering, but to include that as an assumption of available land for residential development. Now, this piece of property is not trust. It is privately held, just like any other private entity and fee owns that property. So those are the only other rezones. Why are there so few rezones inside the city recommended? And that has to do with the sound contours. The sound contours, as I mentioned, as being one of the factors of why we don't think we've seen mixed use. They run as an arc through the property, following the hand here on the map. And the current regulations that we have based on joint land use planning with Fairchild Airport Space are very limiting. And they actually say that we shouldn't be allowing housing, even in this red area, except under extraordinary circumstances. And anything south of that line, we shouldn't be allowing residential at all. And so therefore, in working with our consultant, we were looking for properties north that would be out of the sound contours and not subject to those types of limitations based on our agreement with Fairchild. So these are some that we've proposed with the consultant. We could look at proposing additional areas as part of this conversation. So moving over to UGA, everything that has an orange stripe in it is an existing urban growth area that was adopted in 2020, which was a carry forward from the 2008 comp plan. Areas down here can only be commercial and industrial because of that sound counter I talked about. Just it runs right through here. These areas are outside the sound contour, but this 180 acres has the county off-road vehicle park in it. And if you remember our conversation over the last year with Spokane County, the Spokane County Board of County Commissioners, pursuant to an interest by another property off this map, agreed that it's probably not in the best interest of the county to have a dirt track inside of an urban growth area. And so they're willing to work with us and another property owner to swap this 180 acres. So this property becomes eligible for what I'm gonna continue for the rest of this presentation to talk about swaps. And why am I talking about swaps? The reason we're talking about exchanging acre for acre urban growth area is because Spokane County, which is required to adopt urban growth area boundaries, is under a agreement with a variety of parties as a result of a lawsuit that they did not win. And it limits the county from increasing urban growth areas unless certain triggers have been met. And we haven't met them, even though we've grown this fast, we haven't even met them. But the agreement allows for these acre for acre changes of UGA boundaries. So what we're talking about are swaps. So this 180 acres is available for swap to help us get enough housing. We're proposing to keep this UGA that we already have. It's about 138 acres. So if we have 180 acres that we could swap, where could we put it? So there are a couple of ones that seem very convenient because they're adjacent to an existing city limits boundary, which is a requirement to be contiguous. So this piece of property is contiguous to the city limits on this side. It would be about 320 acres. There's another large chunk of about 320 acres adjacent to Craig Road. This is Craig Road. This is the Spokane tribe right here. A portion of one or a portion of the other or a piece of each of these could be considerations for a UGA swap if we were only looking at the 180 acres. So here's the devil in the details. We have two areas in our present UGA. We might be able to consider swapping as well for about 133 acres. Because right now there would only be able to be commercial or commercial and industrial. This is not something we've spoken with the property owners, and they may not want to lose their UGA designation because it allows them to get utilities and it makes the property potentially have a higher value. But if the city were to consider swapping and using that 133 acres combined with the 180, we begin to get closer to looking at larger pieces of potential locations. Now there are downsides to this location, and then we're going to identify two more for you to consider. One feature here is even though this is on Craig Road and we would be able to extend water and sewer here, there is a railroad going through this property. Again, access in transportation wise to circulation system that the city controls, potentially water and sewer. Again, the railroad goes through a portion of this. The advantage is both of these pieces of property are within an area that officially under a coordinated water plan, we have the right to serve. And I'm gonna explain why that makes a difference for this piece of property over here. This piece of property, which seems like it's a logical piece to think about, so 200 plus acres over here, This is Hayford Road. This is Old Trails here, and if you were to go straight, that would be Dino Road. This is in the city of Spokane's water service area. So it's not as simple to think about expanding our urban growth area here, because we would first have to come to an agreement with the city of Spokane that we would want to serve water in this area and amend the county water plan accordingly. But it is possible, but it's just, each of these has some benefits and some minuses, I guess, if you look at it. Another factor to consider is that the boundary for the Cheney School District comes right through here. So north of this is the Great Northern School District, and south is the Cheney School District. We did brief these maps to the city council on Monday, and the mayor asked that we make sure and share that information with the planning commission, because while technically it still be part of the city and be in 2 school districts, he did want that to be a factor, which is that there's a school district boundary, and the council did talk about potentially asking the 2 school districts to amend their boundaries up to the current corporate city limits, or what would be a Dino Road. So it's not impossible, but it would involve other parties to move that school boundary. It's not the same like a water service boundary, because we can't technically serve for future growth an area we want to become part of the city. When that other jurisdiction, the city of Spokane, doesn't serve unless they annex it. So it's a technical issue we have to work through. So does that all make sense about, we could do some swaps, how many acres we have available depends on if fundamentally we think about, making bigger swaps, some rezones and all of that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So now I'm going to lead you through an exercise of making a recommendation of what to move forward to alternatives. And I'm going to start back on the first map. So the first map, I just want a thumbs up or a thumbs down about lowering the assumption for residential mixed use from 30 to 10%.
Let's see.
The difference is that we might expect between 300 and 600 units in this area versus the current comp plan thought we would get between 1 and 3,000 units.
Hey, Heather, can I toss out a question real quick?
Absolutely.
Are you for at least this evening's planning commission meeting, are you up against it in terms of a timeline for us to deliver these suggestions or recommendations to you tonight?
Well, yes, we are
Okay.
working toward getting some recommendations to build some alternatives that we would put out to the public.
Okay.
So we're trying to build some models that then we'd ask the public to give feedback, and then we're going to bring those same models back to you after, it would probably be the February meeting, and ask you to help us
Well, the only reason I tossed that question out,
make
Heather,
whittle it down to.
the reason for my question is that we're missing both Cal and Mark. And quite frankly, it would be of interest to me and maybe to others, how they would weigh in on these recommendations. Now, if the idea is that you need those recommendations from those of us who are participating tonight, if you need those tonight, then I guess we'll just have to decide, whatever we decide. But if there's any possibility for us to delay the decision or recommendations so that we can have Mark and Cal participate in that, then I would like to consider that. Otherwise, we'll just figure it out tonight. How do you feel about that?
There it is.
What'd you do to Heather, Zach?
Sorry, it was my attitude. It was too bad. She couldn't take it. No, we'll give her just a second to come back. I don't want to speak for her on that one. So
No, I realize that. I don't know how you feel about it, Zach, but you know, what we're missing, like what, 40% of our commission tonight. And, you know, I value Cal's and Mark's opinions, you know, however they weigh in. And, you know, if Heather's frankly not up against the wall on getting the recommendations this evening, then I would recommend that we wait so that those two other players can weigh in on it. Otherwise, if Heather's telling us that, you know, she really does need us to decide tonight, then fine, we'll do that with what we have to work with.
sure. I mean, sorry, go ahead, Stephanie.
No, I think your point's valid, you know, and they also have, I'm pretty sure, the most longevity on the committee. So that's a factor as well.
No, and that's something that we can get some initial thoughts from you guys tonight, and we can bring this back next month as well. So we can do a little bit of both if you want.
Sure.
Let me pull these maps up so we can, you guys can keep looking at them. And if you have any questions or anything, we can do our best until Heather gets back here. That's the right screen, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know, for this one, at least, it makes sense to me. Like if there's been zero interest, you know, changing the projections from this level to that level just kind of makes sense. And given that arc from Fairchild, again, like makes sense.
Yeah, let's get. Sorry, I'm getting Heather back in here right now, and she's in, but she needs to unmute. So give her just a second. There we
Yeah,
go.
sorry about that. So I'm gonna leave my video off because my internet connection's not stable, and hopefully just with audio, it'll work a little bit better. But Hank, I understand, and it's really up to the Plan Commission. If you feel most comfortable waiting for Hank and Cal to join us in January, you know, we can certainly do that.
Mark and Cal.
Mark and Cal, sorry.
Well, one of the things that that Zach and I were just, you know, talking about is maybe we serve up some recommendations with the players that we have tonight. And Zach had suggested maybe there's an opportunity to bring that back up in January so that Cal and you know, Mark can also weigh in on it. What do you think about that?
It's effectively the same thing as waiting till January.
Is it?
Hank.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it
So
really
I-
doesn't help you. Okay.
No, because what we're trying to do is put together some alternatives
Okay.
for a public engagement process that will, you know, put maps on the website and have people vote and that kind of thing. So,
Okay.
you know, we can begin to work through that, but, and, you know,
Okay.
make some recommendations, but we'll go back through all of this again in January if that's your preference. Because we won't be able to publish anything without Cal and Mark, if that's what you would like to do, is have them weigh in.
Well, let's just go ahead and proceed then. And I want to make sure that, you know, the committee gives you what you need, Heather, to move forward. And, you know, obviously that's a responsibility that we all bear. So yeah, let's just go ahead and walk this through and see what we come up with.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that consideration. What I would say is this is absolutely going to be an ongoing conversation, because eventually what we're going to try and do by February, of course, is have a preferred alternative for the plan. So going back to the map alternative 1, if you could, Zach. Maybe to simplify this, is the Plan Commission comfortable with everything that's on this map? So the reduction in the expectations of housing in our commercial zones, moving forward with the downtown plan recommendation for increased density, assuming the Hunter's Crossing rezone of the 10 acres, and that we keep the 1 UGA area that we have that we can do residential with.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
Okay. One nuance here for the area north of the downtown, does the plan commission have a preference on high density residential, which is what the downtown plan said, or mixed use? Now, mixed use would introduce more business mixed with multifamily in that area. Do you have a preference on multifamily or mixed use?
Well, let me ask a quick question, Heather. In the big picture of things, and maybe you can help remind me or all of us, when we look in the future in terms of how we want the city of Airway Heights to look, what do we weigh in more with? Is it mixed use type density, or do we want more single family homes out here? I mean, in the future, we're trying to create this thing that's a real community, right? And what's going to serve that interest the best?
I would say that a mix of housing types is going to serve that need the best. So we're not suggesting that that this area be, just exclusively single family, because that's what it is today. That's the current zoning. We're suggesting through the downtown plan that there be a higher density but mixed use in this area, in the sense of duplexes, townhomes, maybe some fourplexes, maybe some courtyard apartments, maybe even cottage housing. So a mix of housing types. There is, in the analysis that came through last month, the consultant concluded that we have more than enough commercial area in the city, even if we were to rezone areas. So mixed use as the only activity in this area might not allow it to be as successful, but I think that's something that we might be able to move forward, maybe asking the public, like mixed use or high density here. High density doesn't mean it has to be high density. It simply means that you can have more units per acre, up to 20
acre, right? Well, I tell you, as far as I'm concerned, I would prefer to see us develop more housing and not be, hung up on more of the commercial.
Okay.
I like what you're talking about in terms of all these different flavors of housing to accommodate people, so that when people are trying to move into this area, they're able to at least find some place to live.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we'll think about that when it comes to a variety of land use densities for these properties. So if this is high density, when we look at the next map, there's some medium density proposed there, but maybe it should be a mix of low, medium, and high. Okay, perfect. That's what we needed for this map. Can you move down to the second map, Zach?
yeah, I was just gonna say, I haven't had a chance to say anything. Mixed use and walkable communities is kind of what you should shoot for. Especially, I think of way in the future of, us trying to have more walkable mixed use communities, because driving everywhere is not always a good idea, especially with climate change. I mean, and for the folks living in those type of communities, they'd be able to walk and get their groceries, walk and meet their needs. They don't have to necessarily drive everywhere. Because there is a lot of housing, off the main highway 2 all the way back, towards the casinos and all back through there. And with your second map, you could do the swapping of land and still put in more single family more homes back in that area.
So Angelina, you're suggesting that for the 11 acres for the downtown, that it should remain mixed use?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we can put that forward as an option for the public engagement, mixed use or multifamily for this area, and ask people to give us a recommendation. And it'd be a great opportunity as Angelina suggested about, doing some visuals about what it looks like and what it can mean.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So on this map, I'm going to work through the rezones first and have you give me your thoughts, whether it should stay, go forward or not, or we should expand it. So on the rezones on this map, on the north side, so we're looking at the 111 acres that would be next to the rec center, which includes a small piece of the Kalispell ownership, and the 50 acres to the right. What do you think about that? Now, it's currently proposed at medium density residential. So this is getting to one of Hank's questions. So the proposal from the consultant here is 5 to 10 units per acre. So our density ranges for low density are up to 5 units per acre. That's what a typical large lot detached single family house looks like on a project like that. Medium density residential is 5 to 10 units per acre, and high density residential and mixed use both allow for 10 to 20 units per acre. And I'm going to try to avoid maybe like specific classifications of these as being only single family, because I think we have a lot of room to, in our housing chapter and in the land use description of these, is to introduce these other housing varieties as being possible in these areas. So I think it's important that we may start talking about density rather than housing type in these categories. So for example, you're not likely to get very many townhomes in a low density residential because they're attached, right? They're row houses. The lots are too big. Nobody wants a 50-foot wide townhome. So but courtyard or cottage housing could be something that might go into an area, but they'd end up on a very large parcel. So those are the density ranges. Any thoughts on those two pieces that potentially we would rezone?
Well, as far as density goes, if you do the high density, obviously you get more bang for the buck, right? You get 10 to 20 units per acre. And they can look differently, as you had mentioned earlier, different types of housing, but you get more housing for people that are looking to move into the area. So, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but in terms of the biggest bang for the buck, I'd say go high density with the different types of housing and get 10 to 20 units per acre.
Yeah, and that'd be nice to have more housing, around that rec center. And that would give the city incentive to fix that road there, because kids can get hit just trying to bike or walk to that rec center. And all back there, it's nice and more quiet and away from the Highway 2 and Hayford.
Mhm.
Yeah, and those would probably be 2-story homes, and you could get more bedrooms and make it a more, family oriented homes back there, because we sure need those.
One thing, it sort of digresses from this for just a second, if you don't mind, but one of the things that I was thinking about is as I drive through the city, whether it be Highway 2 or otherwise, when I go through Airway Heights, we have so much available property. It's interesting to me why no one has ever built, and maybe there's a valid reason for why it hasn't happened yet, but no one's built a long-term care facility, kind of like the Cheney Care Facility in Airway Heights. There isn't one that I know of. And, for most people, long-term care is the biggest threat to their estate. It's so damned expensive. And, people often have a stroke or something that's uncontrollable, right? And all of a sudden, now you have family members that suddenly become caregivers. And sometimes it's just too much. And sometimes the individual needs round the clock care. I think Airway Heights would be really a great location for some type of long-term care facility, whether it be assisted living or skilled nursing or memory care, whatever it is. Man, I think this place would really be, I think you'd fill it up.
That brings up an interesting thing. Since that's essentially a business, is
Well,
that,
but it is a business. That's true story, Stephanie. But you have to understand too, there's a lot of people that need housing, but they can't live alone. They can't live in a townhome or a duplex or whatever you got. They have to have care. And so, a lot of these places in the Spokane area, that long-term care living, it costs like 6 to 10 grand a month, big time. But people pay it or Medicaid pays it. So anyway, I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it. It's just I was just thinking about the fact that I think Airway Heights would be really a great location for something like that. So I don't know why. I just felt like mentioning it.
well, and I guess I bring up the business point because then how is that zoned? Like
Yeah.
where would the opportunity be there? How is that zoned? I guess that's my question, if we had.
I think Stephanie and Hank both hit on a really good issue, which is our zoning is a barrier. We have these really exclusive zones in the sense that they don't allow for very many other uses. So our residential zones only allow residential, and so assisted living, nursing home, long-term care are not considered to be oftentimes a multifamily use because of the way that they're developed and organized. And so they end up falling into a commercial category. Well, all of our commercial is in the sound contour, and under JLIS, we're not allowed to have concentrations of vulnerable people, and that's elderly and students or young people in buildings. So, one way to think about it is to expand. We've talked about this a lot. Let's see, it looks like Zach clarified that nursing homes are a CUP in the residential area. So again, a potential zoning barrier. People don't want to go through the time and the cost of doing that. But it's something that can be addressed at the zoning, and it can be addressed with a land use plan that talks about broadening uses and categories of what would be allowed, and maybe being looking at this in a way that it doesn't consider a commercial use, which is oftentimes or an institutional use, which is often how they're treated in zoning codes, and they're excluded from residential zones.
Interesting.
So it sounds like the thought was to keep the 111 and the 50 acres, but to consider some higher density residential options for these sites.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, good. Let's see. So then that really just leaves some of the proposed areas of exchange. So can you tell me whether or not we should consider the 133 acres on the southwest side of the city in an exchange, or should we just limit the amount of area we look for in a UGA to the 180 acres on the north side?
So you're saying that we would swap the 180 for that 133?
No, I'm saying that we have the option of only swapping 180 acres, or we could swap 313 acres.
Okay.
Because I think it's pretty clear from the past year that the county is willing to do that, and it makes sense to exchange that 180 acres. But when we look at the options outside the city, we would only be limited to identifying 180 acres of those one or portions of those 3 sites. Or we could add another 133 acres and come up with, 313. I'm no good at math. Zach, what's the math on this?
Nope, not why I do planning.
Can I ask a quick question? Is the city of Airway Heights ever going to consider a high school in our area? And if so, where would they place it? Is that a
Well,
factor at all?
the city of Airway Heights does not directly control the location of schools because they are managed and owned and facilitated by the school district.
Mhm.
So Airway Heights, the city council, various members have expressed interest to the Cheney School District of having a high school located within the city of Airway Heights, based on the idea that we are one of the fastest growing communities within the school district,
Mhm.
and that we in the future will likely have the most number of students being contributed to the school district in the future.
Mhm.
So one school site's already been purchased. Zach, can you point out the elementary site? Nope, it's farther south. Right there. That's gonna be a future second elementary school for Airway Heights. The school district's been purchasing options around this area. As a matter of fact, I was just on a panel with the superintendent a couple of weeks ago. And while he didn't divulge the specific locations, he said they had options on multiple sites in this area around Airway Heights for a future high school. So fingers crossed, we would hope that there would be one.
Okay. I was just thinking more housing around the school, high school would be good, but we don't know where it's gonna be.
We know of one area that's not on the map. So remember the Ewing Oswald application that we've talked about for most of the year, that's over between Deer Heights north of US 2 over to Flint Road.
Okay.
That area is another option we can consider a swap with, and it's actually been an application to the county to do a swap for us, but they never finished their analysis showing that they could be served, which is a GMA requirement. And it's also running into the same problem that the property on the east side of Hayford Road runs into, which is in the city of Spokane water service area. So Spokane has an ordinance that requires them to annex property that they extend water service to. And until that is resolved, or there's an exchange of water service area, I don't know that that would be a property that in the short term we could consider as a UGA, but comprehensive plans are long-range 20-year visions. So it may be long-term that property could be considered for UGA. And the school had been in discussions with them about purchasing property there for a high school site. So look, coming back
I wonder
to,
if that would, so could we make that like an alternative 3 or 4? Or how, if we did swap for that area?
we could certainly put it in the alternative, but keep in mind, we have either 180 or maximum, we have,
Mhm.
313 acres
Okay.
that we could swap. We already know that there are issues there that
Mhm.
would put out resolution of that for a period of time, but
Okay.
there are benefits, it's on our circulation system. It potentially, it's somewhat adjacent to a city limit. It shares a short boundary. That area that they've proposed is predominantly commercial and industrial because of what Zach has put up on the map, which is from the blue line and the purple line south, none of that can be residential because of J-list.
Mhm.
So only the very top portion of the property could be residential. So with that proposal comes a bunch of non-residential uses.
Mhm. Okay.
So, I mean, these all have benefits and detractors from them. There's no, there's no perfect solution for looking at these properties. But to answer your question, Angelina, yes, you can include it in an alternative to put forward for public input.
Okay.
For me, the train kills it for those two parcels, like right through a residential area. Like I live pretty far from the train, and it wakes me up at night pretty often. But I get the water thing on the other one. So.
So the first question to have you go through is, do you want us to add the 133 acres to exchanging for UGAs?
Heather, would you say, not to evade your question, but would you say that it's more advantageous to the city of Airway Heights to focus on the 180 acres?
I would say yes, that's something that really should be done in this, is to include the 180 acres.
Because I sort of get the impression that, you know, when you have to make a choice, I mean, I think we're better off doing the 180.
Well, you don't have to choose. You automatically could have the 180 as a baseline.
Right.
So definitely want the 180 is what we're saying, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Why would you go to down to 133? But
It wouldn't be a reduction. It would be adding to.
Adding.
oh, adding to. Okay.
Yeah,
Down on
then
the
you'd get
bottom
then you
left-hand
would
side.
get the 313.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the 180. I guess my biggest question about the 133, you know, is you had mentioned that if the property owners, you know, gave that up as commercial, it may be more advantageous to keep it that way for them because of access to utilities and all those things, you know. So I mean, yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like the commission's recommending just the 180 for a swap. Is that kind of summarized? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I heard from Stephanie, she's concerned about the two areas that are north and west of the city because of the presence of the railroad line. I would just mention that it does not have to include all of that,
Okay.
because those color blocks represent multiple actual lots.
Mhm.
Can you move over to GIS, Zach, and show them? I know it's hard with static color maps to see the details like that, but
Yeah, what lots do you want to see? I'm sorry.
I want to look at the property on the west side of Craig Road,
Okay.
north of the Spokane Tribal Trust Land.
All right. Right here.
Nope, that's still part of the Tribal Trust Land. It's up above that power station.
Oh.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay, there's the railroad. Yeah.
Yeah, so the railroad is clear north. Can you go down a little bit, Zach?
Can we make the map fill up the screen?
I actually cannot.
Oh.
This is a web browser. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So there are 4, 8, 12. There are 15 parcels that are south of the railroad. in this area as an example, Stephanie. So if you wanted to consider an area and just basically, west of Craig Road and south of the railroad tracks, that would also be an option. We could calculate the acreage. But I just wanted to give you an example. These are not single pieces of property. Can you go to the north, Zach, please? There you go.
Okay.
So there are some pieces that are north of the off-road track, which you can see, that's the 180 that would be given up, that would follow the south line of the railroad tracks. Those are all pieces that could be considered as well if you didn't want to recommend going north of the railroad tracks as an example.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Can you go back to the map we were working on though? The other option is the 211 acres. And again, that's a whole bunch of parcels. I think those are all 5-acre tracts. That's on the east side of Hayford Road. And that the land just keeps going, that could be considered further to the east. We did not recommend including a whole lot of property going south because we may have to go to the GIS to see that, but that's the Shamrock concrete batch plant
Okay.
right along Hayford Road. So you probably, for purposes, if we were looking at residential, there's a right there. Yeah, well, it's a auto wrecking yard, and then there's the Shamrock facility right there. So that's why the properties are going parallel in the recommendation. They're going parallel along Old Trails Road and not going farther south.
Okay.
And so you could actually recommend, can you go back, Zach? You could actually recommend going from Hayford all the way to Flint Road. Can you show them Flint Road there? Nope, just there you go.
Okay.
And then while we're on this map, can you go down to the Ewing Oswald property to the south? So they're not going to include the property that's at the corner of Flint and US2. They're just going to take a small sliver of what they propose adjacent to Sakani, which is the residential development that's on the bottom left side of this image, and then go straight up and make it look like a flag because of that issue with the sound contour. So a lot of the vacant land parallel to Flint Road would not be included to avoid those sound contours, which limit residential, but it'll still end up with acreage that could not be residential. But we just want to kind of use some visuals. And then Zach, do you have the map of the school district boundary to show them?
Give me just a second. That's over at Spokane County. So 1 second.
Okay. So just pausing here while he brings up the school district boundary, so you can see how it lays across these sites. And were there any contenders for consideration for UGA swap for that 180 acres?
Because we were talking about the 211 acres, right?
I think that the recommendation at this point was only the 180 instead of the 312.
Mhm.
So the property that the 200 acres that is east of Hayford Road is also in the Great Northern School District boundary.
Okay.
So where you see the 18 on the middle of the map, that's approximately where that property is located at. So And then where it goes through and includes 13, section 13, the bottom side of that Sprague Avenue. Can you go back to the, yeah, perfect. Can you go back to the map we're working off of? Okay. Thoughts on UGA?
I mean, for me, making, cutting that the thing on the far left, that 321 acres, eliminating what's kind of up above um, the railroad and sectioning it off, like almost parallel with where you've got that 138 acres.
Mhm.
So you give a little bit of distance away from there, kind of makes sense to me. I just know I've lived really close to train track. I actually work right by a train track, and like the stop and go and all the things and the traffic disruptions, and especially if we're thinking about moving into, high density residential, like having apartments near railroad tracks, not great for me. Yeah.
Okay, that's good input.
Yeah, so swapping, the 180 to 138, with the arrows, do you have an arrowing to those other spaces there? That would make total sense.
The 138, we already have that in our current UGA.
Okay, you do.
Yes, so we were proposing to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts about the 300 acres north of the off-road vehicle park, the 180 acres, kind of that triangle shape that's south of the railroad tracks?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I would just extend that 108, extend up from that 180 and go not, I don't know, just the working around the train tracks is the thing.
Mhm.
Like,
Okay.
it's hard for me in any density, like having it go right through the middle
Mhm.
of a community.
Okay. Other commissioners' thoughts about the railroad tracks?
Yeah, I don't really like the railroad tracks either.
Mhm.
I was a kid and a railroad went right behind our house and would scare the living out of me. Every night about 2, 3 in the morning. I still have nightmares. I don't know. I think it's a good idea.
Well, and I do worry about property values too.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to be that house right next to the railroad track,
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, when I
Let's-
was much younger, I worked for both the Milwaukee and the Union Pacific Railroad. And I can tell you that anytime you have any kind of rail traffic, either through or near a city, one of the things that you have to be mindful of is a derailment. And
Mm.
if they're carrying any kind of toxic chemicals,
Oh, yeah.
now you've got an accidental release of what could be very dangerous and toxic chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're in a situation where it's damage control. Are you able to evacuate those people in that immediate area? You know what I mean? It's a big deal.
Is there any sort of boundary recommendation, Hank, like, as far as if that were to happen, that there a safe zone or some sort of something?
Well, all of it, quite frankly, all of it. For example, if they were hauling, let's just say they were hauling, um, ammonium hydroxide or chlorine. It all depends on which way the wind's blowing,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, like that 211 acres, even though we're up against the, the water thing and the school
Mm-hmm.
district possibly being rezoned, it makes more sense to me just
Mhm.
for multiple reasons, but I don't know how much of a barrier, Heather, that kind of puts us up against when it comes to the county and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, they just would put that out farther into the future to be able to work through the requirements to actually consider it as a UGA, which is completely acceptable. And so what we likely would do for, something such as this is because we don't have the ability to do the analysis, for example, for serving that area, that it would be in a comp plan, we probably would frame this as this is a proposed or future UGA. And we would probably come back and put it in concept into this plan, and then begin to work on those issues with the school district and the county and the city of Spokane. And then we're required to do another comp plan by 2026. And so in theory, maybe in the 4 years that occurs in between, we could work through these issues on modifying the boundaries so that by 2026, we could actually recommend it as a final UGA. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, but we can absolutely include it in here, and we can color it differently just to indicate, maybe this is like a proposed and this is an actual UGA that we might be looking for presently. And we still have to do the analysis around what you recommend so that we could come up with an idea of, how much we would get density wise. So for example, the 161 acres you recommended at higher density residential, we're going to get a lot more housing out of that. So we need less land potentially in a UGA to meet our housing projections. So we're going to have to do some math anyway.
Okay. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, like I would be much more in favor, looking at everything of swapping that 133 acres that doesn't have any barrier really because it doesn't have the railroad for it than kind of using those other two parcels.
So I can restate that. So the 133, I'm lost what that was. 133 I thought was out for considering swapping.
No, I know. I'm going back and kind of looking at things now.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we accurately reflect what you were looking for.
Right.
Absolutely. So I forgot to mention one important factor. When we worked with the consultant, we didn't recommend moving the UGA north of Dino Road. And the reason is that the county is currently considering rezoning a lot of the property, not immediately on Dino Road, but behind Dino Road as a mining facility, a long-term mining area.
What kind of mining?
Aggregate mining for gravel,
Gravel?
concrete, asphalt.
Something I want to just toss out quick like a bunny rabbit, getting back to the rail track for a minute. It's really highly advantageous when you do have rail tracks available because it attracts a lot of businesses that require or would like to have, rail service, right? Boxcar or tank car goes right up to their facility. They load it and or unload it, depending. And you can build little rail spurs off the main line there, and you can service all of these different kinds of businesses. And that's a big attraction for a lot of commercial enterprises, is having rail availability. So, that is a huge advantage if you have a rail track like that in or near your city.
We do actually have an active line on the south side
Right.
that goes through our industrial area, and several of you can see the rail line actually in the map here, and they've been building spur lines to facilitate that as well. But that's one of the assumptions that the staff had made, was we were unlikely, when we talk about property value, we would unlikely to see development immediately adjacent to a large scale mining operation. And there presently is a mining operation there. off of Hayford and Dino Road. And so our thought moving forward, and I don't know if the commission agrees or disagrees, is to look east and west rather than going north because of that.
Mhm.
Okay. So it sounds like the commission would like the 211 to be considered, possibly a smaller portion of the west, 210, you know, at a parallel line to the existing city limit. It does not sound like there's interest in the 320 or portion thereof north of the UGA, you know, maybe a small piece of that triangle. So we have all those recommendations, and it sounds like the commission wanted to also include some configuration of the property that had been over off of Flint Road and Deer Heights, the Ewing Oswald property in that area.
Yes.
Okay. Well, with that, we've gone through all of the material, and so just as a quick question, did you have any preference on how the alternatives were presented? Or is it maybe just looking at a combination, once we are able to do the math of rezones and UGA swaps that equal the amount of housing that we need?
I think that makes sense.
Okay,
You know, they're split in so many parcels. Like what parcels could we maybe grab up in those areas to get us to the number that we need to be at?
yes.
Yep.
Okay,
And,
Heather, is that it on presentations?
Are you doing your presentation on the GIS system, Zach?
Yeah, let
Okay.
me get stuff going here.
Well, thank you very much for everybody's time. I really appreciate that. Was a lengthy and detailed conversation, but I very, very much appreciate you working through that. And I'm gonna try my video. Let's see what. There we go. I haven't had an unstable message in a while.
What
Oh.
service provider are you on? I'm just curious, Heather.
Pardon?
Your service provider for your internet.
We are old school in the ground, CenturyLink.
Okay.
Where I'm located at, we've thought about doing a satellite, but we, as you know, this area has a lot of rock outcroppings.
Mhm.
And so it's hard to get line of sight for some of the non-in-ground. So, and we have not looked at the true satellite version yet.
Alrighty. I made a PowerPoint for you guys.
Yay.
Thank you.
These visuals are nice to have. So essentially, I'm going to talk about this with you guys today, and then I'm going to be at City Council on Monday to kind of give the same talk. So you get the trial version. So thank you so much. So I'm just going to talk about our new updated GIS stuff that we're going to be launching probably in January, unless we have significant issues, and we'll push it back to February. But we do have a current GIS system. This is kind of a 2.0 version of that. And essentially, yeah, it's going to be our 2021, 2022 update, or more, I guess, 2022. So our current program went live in 2020. It features individual applications for various functions. So right now, if you go to our GIS site, you'll see two sections, one featuring public works, which has a sewer system map, it has a snowplow map, a water map, and then there's a planning section that has zoning and future land use, but they're all individual applications. They're not cohesive and together in one unit. Currently, we don't have any data downloads available. If anyone wants to get any of our data, they have to email me, and I have to send it to them via a zip file, and it's a whole thing. Our utility data within the public works section, it's current through 2019. All of that data is based on mapping and information we get from our engineering guys. So it's pretty old at this point. It's about 2 years old. We do have a limited search availability. Searching on GIS maps can be difficult. It's not as cohesive as Google. So right now it's kind of tough to use the search feature. There's also an inability to display multiple feature sets at once. So although you can see like things like the APZ, the sound contours with zoning, you can't see, you know, future land use with zoning, and you can't see the sewer system with the zoning. So they're disconnected. So you have to go to multiple places to see everything. So that's what's going on right now currently. The vision we had for our new GIS program was to have an integrated visualizer with expanded data categories. So we've, over the past year, been collecting data sources of things that would be useful to not only myself, Heather, the planning team, the building department, anyone internally that would need it, but also people, potential developers that are coming to the Airway Heights and going, oh, well, where are the utilities, where's the zoning, and, you know, where are wetlands, stuff like that. So we've been collecting data over the past year to get this kind of all in one place. We wanted more direct integration with an active building tool permit. So essentially we have a tool, we have a website, you can go click on it, it'll show you all, and I've showed this to you guys before, so you know what I'm talking about. But I want to have that more available. It's kind of buried on our website right now. So one of my goals putting this together was to make sure that was up front and center, to make sure that's more integrated. We also wanted to expand the tools and access and encouraging engagement. So having a cool GIS program, it's helpful for us internally. It's nice for other people who want to access our data, but it also encourages engagement within the community and the development community. Members of the community at large who want to know about sound contours. It impacts our ability to do development so much. We could point in there and actually have a visual. So making it more inclusive and accessible to, you know, non-developmental people or people that are just curious about what's going on in the city was another goal of ours. So the new system, it is comprised of two pieces. The first piece is the open data portal. This is a screenshot. I'll take you guys there in just a second here. But this is what our open data portal looks like. It is a data warehouse for in-house GIS products. So every piece of GIS, not every piece, most pieces of GIS material that have been produced by the city are now available via this website to download. So if you want to download it, bring it home, use you know, ArcGIS, or there's some open source GIS softwares, you can now take our data and use it to do whatever you want. There are links to new geodata viewer, which I'll talk about here in a second, and also that active data permits. So this is kind of going to be the first place you go. And then from there, you can either go to our new geodata viewer, which is a way to view the data without downloading it, or you can go to our active data permits and check out what's going on with permits in the city. There's also, it includes links to local GIS data sources. The GIS, especially on the municipal level, is a very open source idea. The idea of sharing data between multiple municipalities and specific agencies in the city is really, really important because it allows us to create integrated maps, and also just, you know, the what is the saying about the ships, they all rise at once kind of an idea. So that's the idea behind sharing GIS data between multiple municipalities. So the second part of this is the City of Airway Heights GeoData, which is our new data viewer. It's a second generation and it's integrated. So instead of having 4 or 5 different tools to look at data, we now have one. So everything is in one place. We have over 30 different layers, and that's growing, you know, every week. I added 2 additional layers to it this past week. One of them being wellhead protection areas from ecology. We added those, and then we added our subdivisions layer. So now you can go and check out all the various subdivisions and how those went in. This tool features enhanced locating and measuring features. It allows you to search a lot easier than our previous GIS system. And it also allows you to measure not only a straight line, it allows you to measure polygons. So if you want to get a decent idea of how big like a house footprint would be on a lot, you can use that measuring tool. And also it's just the latest and greatest GIS for the City of Airway Heights. Mainly all of the Utility layers have been updated to the latest maps, which are good through 2020. So we've added a year of water lines, a year of sewer lines that have been developed through our Public Works Department. So. And here's a couple other screenshots just to give you an idea of what this looks like. Again, I'll take you here in just a second. But I want to make sure that everything on here I covered. Data integration with multiple national and local data sets. So a lot of this data is hosted other places. It's hosted either at Ecology, it's hosted at Spokane County. And what that does is it actually saves us in bandwidth. So we're still very, very small. Our GIS team, which is
It's Zach.
it's me. I'm the GIS team. I keep saying we, but you know, it's really, really important for us. Again, going back to that idea of open source GIS data to integrate, you know, data from other sources that is important to the city, but allowing us to have access to stuff like that is so, so important. Our system would be a third of what it is without those outside sources. So we do have 8 different data categories: utilities, environment, overlays, transportation, property boundaries, planning, and census. The census demographics, I don't know if they're going to stick around, but just for the mostly because they're from the SF1, which is the summary files. Essentially, they're from 2010. And since we've grown 60% in the past 10 years, I don't know how useful that data is. But once the 2020s come out, we'll probably bring those back. So we'll see. Right now they're there, but we'll see how that goes. And again, we've done multiple updates to all of our current existing data layers. So let's do a test drive here. Let me bring this over here for everybody to see. So this is our data catalog, and it gives you the option here. You can search either data or apps or maps. So in this case, we can say water, and it'll take us to a water line. And there they are. Through here, you can view full details. You can go and say, I want to create a map. I want to do a story map. Show me the API. Let me open it. Let me download. It lets you do anything and everything from there. If you don't know what you want specifically, you can also explore data categories. So this will take you to all of our data. So urban growth areas, reclaimed water valves, water lines, anything and everything you could possibly want. It's all available in one place. If you want to look at a category, so if you're just interested in boundaries, transportation, utilities, and planning, those are all available. Again, you can click on those and it will take you through. If you scroll down here, here you have 2 links. One takes you to the active data portal permit. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because we've gone over it before. But again, shows you what's going on here. You can click on any of these. It'll tell you the permit status. You can filter if you're looking at building permits, if you're looking at grading. For us, it's mostly land use, which we don't have a ton going on right now. It's the off season, but you can see what's going on here. Oh, there's a subdivision going in. Oh, we're subdividing, you know, all sorts of good information there. And then I'm going to come back to GeoData Viewer because this is where we're going to spend most of the rest of the time, but also have a featured application here. So if you just want to access the data without getting into the whole thing, you can actually just look at the data straight on here. And you can go through and look at everything. So there's a way of doing that there. And then there's also links back to our, if you want to simplify it and not get into 30 different layers, you can also still look at everything. It's all still present there. So, and then our contact information. Oh, zooming in when I don't want. This is our new data viewer. So we got our usage agreement. Again, it's just, hey, you can't sue us if you use this, which is essentially what that is. You agree. So I'll show you guys a couple of things here. So our utilities, we've got all the city's utilities here. Fire hydrants, manholes, water valves, sewer lines, water lines, reclaimed water lines, which is new. So, and reclaimed water line, excuse me, the valves and the lines for those. Your legend is static. It's here all the time. So you can go through and see what you're looking at. So you can zoom in here. Let me know if I'm making you guys sick. I'm sorry. I can be clicky with these sort of things. So I apologize.
So Zach, when you say reclaimed water lines, are those the water lines that were contaminated back in 2015 to 2017?
No, so reclaimed water lines are essentially non-potable water, so water that can be used
Oh.
for irrigation and not consumption.
So it's water coming from the wastewater plant that's already been treated, so it actually meets drinking water standards, but technically it's not used for drinking water. So it comes from the sewage plant.
Yeah.
And what it does is it reduces the amount of potable water that a business or industry may need. So the city's been actively marketing this as a way to reduce potable water taken directly out of, a well or an aquifer.
Well, and a lot of our agricultural uses ROS systems anyways, so it's taken down to nothing by the time it's like put on plants and things like that.
So all these features, you can click on them. It'll tell you the size and the material it's made out of. Some of them aren't clickable just because there isn't any information, but here's your sewer line diameters and all these engineering features, your lengths and stuff like that. So most of these features have associated data with them. But that's kind of our utilities. Again, these reclaimed lines are new, and the manhole sewer lines, they've all been updated. A lot of the updates took place up in our northwest corner here, where all that new residential development's going on over in Highland Village and in Arrowleaf. Environment is something that it's a little tricky. Neither one of these layers are ours, so they're not distributed through us, but we're linking to them because they are important. Wetlands is a layer that's done by the National Wetland Inventory, which is, I believe, through
Army Corps of Engineers.
yes, that one. And this is a huge data set, and this is one of our wetlands here. So you're seeing a fresh water. There's not a ton of wetlands that are mapped in the city of Airway Heights, so you're not going to see a ton there. But this is probably the biggest data set we have on this entire program. It's national, and you can see the level of specificity. So if I zoomed out now to show you the entire United States, it would cover the entire United States. So we obviously don't have the capacity to store that amount of data. So again, we appreciate the ability to link to that. This is through ecology. This is the wellhead protection areas, which are all down here. And again, that's just if you're looking to develop, you can identify where those pieces are. So if you need to mitigate them, they're there. Our overlays, you've seen these before, but just so you know, this is our SIA overlay, which is we're not allowing, well, we're not putting out for download because it was developed by the city of Spokane. Kevin developed that. We can't be here tonight, but so we're not allowing that for download. The APZ is still here, our old friend. There's the mixed use overlay, which we've talked about a lot, but that's still there. The sound contours we've actually made a change to. So part of the sound contours that, I don't want to say frustrating because it's not the right word, but showing them all as kind of a single color implies that they're all kind of the same intensity. So what we've done, I'm not going to get into the technical aspects of it, but we've actually tried to visualize intensity a little differently here. So you can kind of see as, and there's our levels. So as the levels get more intense, your brain says, oh, red is bad and green is good. And that's kind of what we're looking at here. So your 65 is going to be the green and so on and so forth. So that's a visual change we've made. And if you guys have any comments or thoughts, please shoot.
No, I'm not, but like I'm a data-driven person, so all of this is making me very excited.
Good. Glad to hear that.
No,
Hey, Zachary, Zach, I got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So if I'm driving somewhere and I see equipment digging in the dirt, or maybe even a building being framed up. And is this the go-to application to figure out what they're building there?
So that would be, we would go to the main site and then click on the active permits portal. And that'll
Permits,
give
right?
you- yeah. And
Okay.
all of the details on any permit in the city, you'll be able to pull there.
Okay,
No,
That being said, there are certain things where, there are code names and stuff like that for large projects sometimes, So,
and for me, just as a business owner, having access to all of this, like if I'm looking at a prospective new location,
Mhm.
like I love it.
yeah, and that's the idea is, you can pull your zoning up, you can see your wellheads, like, oh, is that going to be an issue if I have potential contaminants? And it really helps you, identify areas where, okay, this is probably where I should be looking. So,
No, I like it a lot.
so for transportation, we actually have a couple new features here that are new to the program this year. Snowplow routes are the same. And this is more of a community feature. This is something that I noticed the community Facebook group talking about a lot, not knowing what's going on with the snowplows. So it's fairly simple to design. So it's there more for them. But the two new features, we have roads. So this base map, this is changeable, by the way. If you don't like this base map, you have a plethora of options here. So if you're not a fan of the ortho and the photo, you can make it look antique if you want. There are all sorts of stuff you can do there. But our roads, we actually have them broken down by type, by classification. So again, this is something if you're a developer and one of the requirements is, oh, well, I want to put an apartment complex in, but it's required to be, adjacent to a major collector. Where are those at? They can come here and get that information and save a phone call to our engineer. So it saves everybody time. So this is just a detailed breakdown of all the various roads within the city. And then the layer that was painstakingly created by hand over the latter part of the summer is our sidewalk layer. And to my knowledge, this is the first time that the sidewalk network has been mapped in the city. SRTC had done some work on it previously, but it was probably 5 or 6 years behind. So it was a good place to start. But this is a cool tool just to look at equity, just to look at where we're missing sidewalks. And there are some pretty glaring holes going on. And as development takes place, we will update this to make sure, it's maintained and accurate. So it's really nice, again, not only for, community members, but also for, SRTC, Spokane Regional Transportation Council. They do a lot of, research on walkability and transportation, but this will be really nice for them when they come around and need to do their work. Property lines, some of these are not too bad. So we do have buildings. If you want them, they're there. So it's the shadows of all the existing buildings that were derived from satellite photos. Tax parcels is actually automatically always on. So you can turn that off if you don't want to see the parcels. But in general, they're there. Cool thing about the parcels layer is it's actually pulling straight from Spokane County. So as parcel boundaries change, this is updated in real time. So there's like a 5-minute lag between someone at Spokane County making a change to a parcel and it showing up in our system. So having that access is really cool too. We also have mobile home parcels. This is also hosted by Spokane County. It's a feature just because it's something that we could eventually need, but it's not anything super fancy or anything like that. Boundaries, again, the municipal boundaries turned on automatically just so you can see Airway Heights. But we do have, zip codes has recently been added just because that comes up a lot in conversations, again, about zip codes and about what is Spokane and what is Airway Heights. And that's, a lot based on zip codes. So that's there. Engineers who are curious about township sections and ranges, they're all here. So nothing super fun to look at, but they're there in case you need them. The UGA, which we spent a lot of time looking at today, is available to see here. And again, if anything changes, that'll change. But for those interested in that, that's available. The subdivisions is I like it because it's really colorful and fun. But these are all of our subdivisions in the city and all the additions and all the phases. So if you are curious about how, you know, the city has developed over time, or if you live in the city and need to know where your subdivision's at, you can actually go in and take a look. And as you zoom in, the layers turn, or the labels, excuse me, turn on there. So you can take a look at that.
That's cool.
Yeah, we have a static map of this in the office, and it's kind of been a hit around the office, so I included it in the digital.
Yeah,
So
it's great.
No, I love it. Like just being able to see like how, because I was in one of the very first developments in Airway Heights, and seeing how that's all expanded is pretty cool. So,
well, speaking of that, I'll come back around to that in a minute. But well, when we talk about what we're doing next, there's some fun things we're working on in terms of how the city has developed over time that hopefully we'll get to. So these are pretty simple. Feature land use, we've seen this before. Zoning, we know all about it. One thing we did add here was, again, integration with Spokane County, their plats layer, which is something a lot of people go to Scout for, especially if we're doing like a short plat or some sort of a boundary line adjustment, things like that. But you can go actually in and see all the various plats that have gone in over time. So this is something, you know, not necessarily for the general public, or at least they wouldn't really be interested in it, but for us, as you know, doing planning work, that's something that helps us out a lot as we interact with that. So I'm just going to spend a second here on census data. So like I said, I'm not sure if this is going to make the final cut, but they're just chloroplats that kind of give you a general idea of census blocks. But again, the data is pretty old. The 2020 stuff is slated to be released sometime in the next year. Depending on data size, we'll see. I would really like to include up-to-date census data because I think it's really important. But you know, I have essentially the way the system works is I get like points, and the more stuff I host, the more points they take away. So it's a balancing game. So if I'm able to, it'll be there. So that's other than that, if again, you know, Hank, if you're here and you're like, oh, I saw something was happening down the street, I want to take a look. There is a button right here for your active date or your active building permits. So that takes you straight back here. So there's direct integration, not only at the warehouse level, but within GeoData itself. Again, that's the theme, right?
Zachary, I have to really applaud your efforts for this, and I appreciate your sharing this information. And I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but this is really going to be a benefit to me, because quite often my wife will say, what are they building there? I go, I don't know. You know? and she'll say, aren't you on the planning commission? You should know. Well, I don't know that. Okay. And it's like, cut me a break. So now, Zachary, given now that I've got this information, that's going to be my go-to.
Yeah. No excuses.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. That is so true.
Well, I mean, it happens, right? You look at this thing and you're like, what are they building there? My wife wants to know. And I'm like, I don't know. You know?
well, and I think something, you know, for the community as a whole, I get questions all the time, like, oh,
absolutely.
hey, through Airway Heights, I noticed that this was happening. Like, what's going in there? Now
Right.
I give them a link.
Right. How many times have you seen a building, right? And you're like, what's going to go in that building? What is that? There's no sign out front that says, hey, this is the home of such and such, right?
Yeah.
And so thank you, Zachary.
Oh, no, that's totally, that active building permit is a tool that we've had for years, but I think so many people just don't know about it. And it's such an important tool for the community. That's why I'm trying to highlight it as much as I can. So
yeah, well, good
no,
job.
it totally makes sense. No, and all of this, like all of the data sets, even the sidewalk expansions, things like that. Like when we're looking at things, like being able to access these, like just in one place is amazing. So,
so we do have sorry, my dog was just freaking out for some reason. So this is our search tool. Again, I'm just going to pick a random address here. So it zooms you to it and it blinks.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how much actual work went into that blinking. But it's really neat.
And that's an industrial complex over. on
Yeah,
the-
that's actually if Mark was here.
No, I know. Blue Roots, I used to be involved with them. So being able to look at that, yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah, it was just one of the addresses I was using for testing. So, but that's where it is. And if you want to go in and say, you're like, well, how big is this building? You got this little tool here where you can.
Oh, I like that, because when I'm looking at a potential grow opportunity right next to Mark, that's
If
great.
you don't want meters, you can go square inches. Why not? That's helpful. You can do yards, you can do square feet, which is, what you want to do there, but also acres. So it gives you the option to do all that. And that same tool can also do measuring lines.
It's amazing. This is amazing. For so many reasons.
So in general, I think that's kind of the tool here. So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint for a minute. And talk about the next steps. So again, that new program implementation, we're looking at January, hopefully February at the latest. I think we're fairly okay. There's a couple little things I still want to tweak, but we're pretty close here. Next steps for the GIS program, high accuracy, which is sub-meter. So when you think of, we're going to start working on gathering locational data. We've got some new hardware that allows us to go in and actually identify things. So like we'll just say like a manhole. Right now, it's fairly accurate if you look at it and zoom in and out, but as you zoom in, the closer you get, the less accurate it is. That's just kind of the nature of things. But our new receiver allows us to get within a meter of each feature. So starting data collecting for our public works guys, going out there and taking all these readings of things like water mains. So if it snows and they need to know where the water main is, we can have a highly accurate spot for them to go check out. So we're really excited about getting that going. That's something that, Public Works has really been looking to do for a while now, but it's actually fairly difficult to do, and it's going to be pretty time consuming, but we're excited to have some hardware to do that. Targeted data tools. So these are the two things I've actually started working on, the latter one, but I wanted to show you kind of examples of what these are. So we'll start with the annexation. So here's a tool that Houston did. And this is, just think of the data, not necessarily the viewer, but this allows you to essentially go through the history of the entire city.
Oh, wow.
And view the data as the city grows over time. So you can view the annexation. So for us, internally, we look at projects all the time that decisions were made prior to annexation to Airway Heights, but it's hard to know when that happens because we don't have a map that shows us how the city was built. So I'm actually going through the files right now of all of our previous annexations all the way back to 1955 and building that back up from scratch. So it'll be good for us so we can go, okay, well, they put this house in 1975. Was it in the city at that time? Oh, we have a map that shows us. So that's, one good thing for us, but it's also, again, it's a cool tool for the city and, the people living in the city to understand how, we were built up over time. So like I said, it's not gonna be exactly like this, but the general idea of watching your city being built over time is here, so.
No, and it's really cool to see how it's changed over time. Like, even if you could connect, like this was the goal,
Mhm.
is how it actually evolved.
Yeah, well, and what this particular map is it's called a story map, which allows you to, use a map, show these different phases of it, but also interject. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but you can interject actual maps and documents and in text, so you can tell a story over time through a mapping application. So this is going to be something that at the end of the day, this is what we're looking at. So it'll be practical for us, but it'll also be informative to the citizens. So that's something I'm really excited about. And then the second piece is this kind of visual zoning guide. And I did find one from Bend that did a pretty decent job of this. So the idea for me, I get a lot of questions all the time. I get phone calls about pretty basic zoning stuff. And I don't want to sound like I'm trying to push this off onto a program, but if I can make it educational and fun and clicky and, colorful, and also provide a learning opportunity for people that are interested in land use in the city of Airway Heights, then I'm all about it. So the idea here is to essentially take our zoning code as it is, which is pretty black and white, straightforward, and add visual aspects to try and make people understand what the goal of the zoning code is by also providing, an active map here. And then as you go down residential, here's all these different things. Here's some visuals. Here's your setbacks. Here's what it actually looks like. And here's what the zoning looks like on a map. So it really just ties what's there, B, what we'd like to be there, and C, how do we get there together? So this is something we're working on. I need to go out and actually just spend a day taking pictures of the city. Right now, the weather would make for some pretty ugly pictures. So I'm kind of waiting till spring to go out and take some pictures. But again, just having a visual associated with our zoning districts, and then having setbacks, visual stuff, like people. Obviously I'm a very visual person. So this is not only for the community and the development community, it's for me, because it's easier to picture what an R2 is when you think of when you have something like this. You go, oh, okay, so it's like a duplex or a townhome or whatever it is. But Ben did a really good job here, having all sorts of, and this is their commercial zones, and they break it down by individual, commercial district and stuff like that. So again, it won't look just like this, but the idea of having this interface where you could, go to specifics, have the maps, have pictures, have all sorts of stuff there. So that's kind of where we're going with the GIS program in the next year, is implementing these, these tools to allow everyone to interact. And that kind of goes back to one of the initial goals of the program, which was to increase accessibility and to make the program easier to use and also, useful as well. So with that, I think that's it. And that is
Zachary, something that goes hand in glove with the presentation, and I appreciate you presenting that to the commission, but my being from the maritime industry and running ports and stuff like that, one of the things that I remember we did use GIS for is disaster planning.
Yes.
On coastal areas, you have tsunami warnings and tsunami routes to evacuate, that sort of thing, which is really helpful. And we use that GIS. I remember playing around with it, and I could look at risk-prone zones like hospitals, rehab centers, all those kinds of things, and you can do some really cool planning with that GIS. And I'm not even remotely as familiar as you are, but I know that it's applicable in disaster planning and stuff, and it's really helpful.
Yeah, so there's kind of two aspects, well, way more than two, but to simplify it, there's that kind of active and passive GIS. So passive being what we just looked at, there's all sorts of data, it's good, you can use it and, click and turn things off. But then there's that active side where you're using that data to do, some analysis.
Right, that's right.
And right now, we're not at a point where we're using it for analysis, but we definitely have that ability to do it. So specifically to disaster planning, weirdly enough, after doing our critical areas update, we don't have a ton of features that would, we don't have obviously tsunami, but we don't even have a geologically hazardous feature in the city limits. So a lot of that stuff, our biggest, if we're like having a real conversation about that, I'd probably look at fire, look at forest fires and things like that. So but that is just one, it's such a, I'm such a fan of GIS. Angelina has heard me scream about GIS before, so I'll save her the, 10,000th time of doing that. But it's a tool, and there's so many applications.
The earthquake zones in there.
Well, for me, I guess the question would be, is there some, if we're talking about, higher density residential areas, if they're building up, when we have a lot of winds up here, so what's the potential for that? Because I know, like, within the first year of owning my house, I had to replace half my roof.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's height restrictions.
I'm only I'm a two-story structure. So if we're going up 4 stories, like, is there potential for some things to happen with the high winds that we get up here too, you know?
Yeah, and those development requirements are things, if that comes down to it, I'm not sure anything we've ever even looked at that, honestly, but that would be something like if the building department said, hey, well, we need to identify, all of the homes that would be affected by this change. That's something we can use GIS for. We can go through and do an analysis and even do stuff where I could like do a hyper specific elevation analysis and identify where houses are and where they're not, stuff like that. There are just so many tools with
Right.
GIS.
No, I love it. Because the more data you have, the more you can draw from it.
Yep.
I-
Yeah, and I'm a data pack rat. I have
Same.
a terabyte hard drive full of nothing of data that I'll never use.
Well, Zachary, you had mentioned earlier, and it's a true story, GIS can be used for monitoring a disaster and using it as a planning tool. Because, imagine this, right? Let's say we get an industry, or perhaps we even have one, and they have a big chemical release accidentally.
Mhm.
I've gone through where adjacent businesses to our marine terminal actually released a considerable amount of chlorine gas. Now, someone mentioned earlier that it gets a little breezy in Airway Heights once in a while.
Mhm.
And so where is that plume gonna go?
Mhm.
And how quickly is it gonna go? And we get some hellacious winds through here.
Mhm.
It won't take long to spread that gas plume. So, what's the plan?
Yeah, well, and with something like that, you'd look at OSHA and integrate that with stuff that's going on over ecology and even NOAA, because NOAA tracks winds in real time.
Right.
So you can go get that if you're at ecology and you're like, there's a spill. What do we need to do? They call up NOAA. NOAA's like, well, here's where the winds are at. Here's and then they do their calculations, and that's all done. Saving how many lives.
But what I'm talking about is like, just for a city disaster plan,
Mhm.
if people were to say, well, what if there was an accidental chemical release, Zachary? How would we be notified to evacuate? What's that look like? Blah, blah,
Mhm.
Anyway, we don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but
For sure. Well, and there's also crime and fire is something, it's not on the horizon or anything right now, but eventually I'd like to do what I can to integrate a little bit with, other departments with that, so we can identify, high vulnerability areas. There's so much we can do.
yeah.
Trying to pinpoint one specific thing is tough.
That's something that I take into account when we're talking about these, higher residency areas, when we have more apartment complexes and things like that. Like, what does that do to our crime rate?
Mhm.
Because historically in if you have more apartment buildings, if you have typically your crime rate rises.
Well, and what GIS will do there is allow you to have data to back stuff like that up, right? It allows you to take data, put it into a geospatial space and run an analysis and go, okay, well, here's where our hot points are. And then you can, try and understand what's going on there. That's kind of where GIS started. Really, it was a cholera outbreak. And they tried to, they had a map and they overlaid all of the water wells. And they discovered that it was coming from one specific water well, and that was the whole genesis of GIS. But yeah, no, there's so much integration, so much to do right now. I'm just trying to get a program up and running that'll help as many people as possible and be as accurate as possible. So hopefully we're there at least for the next little while, and I can start working on these individual tools. And as that expands, we'll go nuts.
Well, I'm sure all of us will agree that you did a great job here, Zachary, and thanks for the presentation. Does that conclude your presentation now?
Yes.
Okay. I know you're pretty excited about it, but no, that's great stuff.
No, it's great. I love it.
So do we have any, I don't think we have any public hearing tonight, yeah?
No, we do not.
Okay. So we'll move on to action items.
There are no action items for this
No action
evening.
items, right? Okay. And then we have item 11, workshops.
We have no workshops.
Okay. Any commissioner reports? Anybody have anything for the good of the commission?
Nope.
Don't everybody speak up at once. Okay, nothing there. Any further staff reports at all?
Zach, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll be brief because I just
Okay.
talked so much. But as Heather mentioned at the top, we're going to be, bringing our Christmas goodie bags to you guys. So I'll be reaching out to you later this week for a good time, because we don't want to drop in on you guys unannounced. But we'll probably swing by next week. And yeah, I'll be reaching out to you individually. I think I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Zach. And we are super lucky to have Zach. He is so talented and he's really bringing us light years into not just the present, but the future for Airway Heights with tools like GIS. And this has only been a year since he launched the first version, and he had to hand create, as he mentioned, many of the layers initially for us to get to this point. And it's invaluable, not just for staff, but as Stephanie indicated, perspective development, and as well as what Hank indicated is future analysis, like, response time for police and fire. But moving on to things that we also have coming up. So I just wanted to let you know that it looks like the award for the downtown plan that we received from the governor, which is called the Smart Community Board, is going to be presented on January 24th, the city council meeting. So everybody's welcome to attend that. It'll be a virtual meeting for the presentation. So it'll be a crystal award for smart communities and smart vision. Let's see, we also have applied for several different grants, and I think our chances are pretty good. So one of the grants we applied for to the Spokane Transit Authority was for about $1.7 million. That decision will be rendered tomorrow by the Spokane Transit Authority Board, and that grant was to finish the 6th Avenue Road. So it would complete 6th Avenue connecting all the way to Craig Road. Why is that significant? It would allow for STA to provide bus service to our residential area. So it's part and parcel of a partnership with STA in which Airway Heights would put up 20% of the funding plus the grant. We'd be able to complete the roadway. We'd be working on sidewalk segments going all the way back to Russell. So it would be complete walking opportunity and transit from where it presently stops at Russell and would come all the way through to Craig Road. So basically that opens up about 1,600 households to receiving transit service that do not have access to that today. And something like 500 households that are low income would receive the benefit of the transit. Part of that proposal would also bring transit down Craig Road. I believe it would loop down through Lawson. It would come through McFarland and begin to provide for the first time transit service in our industrial area. Specifically the Amazon facility on McFarland, and then come down Hayford Road and hit the large existing Amazon facility out in the county. So it's a big comprehensive approach to getting living and working opportunities for using transit in our community. That grant application also includes about I believe $50,000 that would further transit planning on US 2 as part of our downtown plan. We did apply for a grant to the Transportation Improvement Board for about $850,000 to do a community engagement effort that would look at multimodal opportunities on US 2 from Hayford to Craig Road. So that's looking at sidewalk and bike lanes and looking at roundabout options, looking at a variety of ways to increase safety and crossings of US 2, and we would look at specific designs from Lawson to Lindstrom. With that funding, that decision will be made after the first of the year by the TIB. So we'd be really looking forward to, if we received that money, it's a complete streets grant from Transportation Improvement Board. It would launch a 2-year total engagement and design process within our community for those dollars. So we're pretty excited about the opportunity that presents as well. We're also going to be applying for some additional grants in 2022, including a Safe Routes to School project. That will be where the demonstration project was at King and 6th Avenue. We'll bring you an update about that as we get closer to the application, but mostly just want to let you know about those 2 grants because we should be receiving decisions, and it's highly likely we will get that $2 million from STA. It's the top of their list of funds for projects.
Oh, that's great. Even providing access to public transport in that industrial area is huge.
We agree. So some great opportunities that we're building on here moving forward for funding. So other than that, we'll probably by the next meeting have an updated schedule for you for the comp plan to include. We also have a survey out right now on our comprehensive plan website, and Zach, if you could put that in the chat. So we're going to be putting out community engagement, encouragement to go do this transportation survey. So just under 20 questions about, where are there missing sidewalks? Where are you having difficulty walking or biking? Where do you walk and bike most often? How about for vehicular access? Do you feel like there's big delays in getting to your destination? Where are there safety issues? Where do you see transit expanding in the community? So please do fill out that survey, which is currently on our comp plan website. So it's a unique separate website for the comprehensive plan update. And please encourage people to fill that out. The more information we get from that survey, the more that we will understand about what we need to do for our transportation chapter that we'll be working on over the next couple of months. And that same website is where these alternatives will be posted to for people to look at. I'm hoping it's going to be like a visual preference survey for those choices. So that'll probably get put up onto that same website by the end of this month, and we'll be running that through January to get feedback, and we'll send out the links and information, and we'll do additional push out for the public to get them to give us feedback on those proposals as well. And then from there, it's going to be developing various chapters and looking at probably presenting a draft to the Plan Commission by a complete draft of the whole comp plan by April. But as I said, we'll get you the updated timeline for you to look at for your next meeting as well. So a lot of things that we're working on, and good things are happening in Airway Heights. So we're really excited.
Thank you, Heather.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for putting that in the chat.
Wow, it's a lot of exciting things you guys are working on. You've been really busy.
Absolutely. Well, we're very much want to help this community develop, a vision of where they're going and help accomplish that vision. And, it's a lot of pieces to move it forward. But I would say that this wouldn't be possible without great partners in our community. STA, definitely one of those partners, and looking for opportunities to help move forward our downtown plan and help us have transit. That's just, one of many opportunities that we've heard about lately where people want to help us move forward with our community and our efforts. So moving from plan to implementation, getting things on the ground, and we're going to have a lot more detailed conversations in the future along those lines. But we just hit the iceberg tip on, such as types of housing. How do we get that niche of the type of housing we need to provide to our community moving forward, and what opportunities do we have to make sure that they get built? And with that, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's time this evening.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Heather. You and Zachary have provided a tremendous amount of information, and we appreciate it. Is there any further business this evening by anyone? Speak up now or forever hold your peace. Okay, without any further business, just a reminder, next Wednesday, January 12th at 6 p.m. is our next scheduled meeting. And before I adjourn the meeting this evening, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Yes.
So hopefully Santa's good to everybody this year. We've all been good, right? So anyway, with that, unless there's anything else, I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Yeah,
Okay,
you, everybody.
everyone have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much.
All
Peace,
right,
peace.
good night.
Good night.
Night.